Now, the main part of our lesson today was actually something called FOIL. Now, FOIL is actually an acronym which stands for first, outer, inner, last. Now, I like to use this method because it reminds you that there's 4 parts to your answer. First thing we look at is we look at the first term in each set of parentheses. Then we look at the outside of the question. Then we look at the inside of the question. And then we look at the last term in each set of parentheses. So we're doing the same as we did before. We're multiplying these, but it's just a special method to actually figure out what this multiplication is. So I like to draw arrows on this, and in fact, normally if I'm drawing this, I actually go across the top here. So I multiply the first term in each one together, so x times x, which gives you x squared. Now I broke this up so you can see easier what's actually happening here. So when I go to the outer term, I multiply the outside terms together, so in other words x times 2, which is 2x. Now the inside terms are these 2 terms here, so when I multiply those together, 6 times x is 6x, and then the last term in each set of parentheses, 6 times 2, is your last terms. And really when I'm actually doing this, I'm not actually writing it like this, I just did this to make it easier so you could see where these answers are coming from. I would actually do it like it does on the bottom of the page here. I would literally just write out x squared. If the answer is 2x, I know it must be positive 2x. 6x must be positive 6x, 12 must be positive 12. If I end up with negative 12, then I'll put subtract 12. When you do this, you then look for like terms. So positive 2x, positive 6x, when I add those together, 2 plus 6 gives me 8, so 8x. So when you multiply out this expression here, then what we end up with is x squared plus 8x plus 12. Now, that's the method I prefer. A lot of students actually prefer what's called the box method. So this is the same question, x plus 2 times x plus 6. And you draw a grid depending on how big your question is. So this has 2 terms and this has 2 terms, so I got a 2 by 2 grid here. Notice I didn't put the plus, it was positive 2, so I just wrote 2. 6, so positive 6, so I just wrote 6. And then this actually looks like the homework exercise we did, which is probably why students preferred this method. So x times x, we just write it down, x squared. X times 2, 2x. X times 6, 6x. 6 times 2, 12. And then we add up all these answers together. Now you might not choose to write this all out, you might just do this part in your head, but that's essentially what you're doing. Notice you do have 4 answers though, which is important, like FOIL. So when you look for like terms here, 6x and 2x, or we could just do this part here, they're going to combine. Positive 2 plus 6 is positive 8, and then we do end up with x squared plus 8x plus 12. Now notice we also had that same answer when we did it by FOIL. So basically you've got a choice of 2 different methods depending on what you want to use. Now just a reminder of some vocabulary from last time as well. What 2 words from last lesson could describe your answer? Well, I can see that there's 3 terms, so that would be a trinomial. I can also see the highest power is 2, because this is written in standard form, so that would make that a quadratic. And I thought I had those under there, but I guess not. Now, let's look at one more question. This one's slightly more complicated. I put 2x and I put 3x in, and I also threw some negatives in here. So I did it by FOIL first of all, so the first 2 terms together, so 2x times 3x, 2 times 3 is 6, x times x, x squared. And I did the outside 2 terms, so 2x times negative 2, 2 times negative 2, negative 4, and then we need the x. Inner, we need to look at these 2 terms here on the inside, so negative 3 times x is negative 9x. And our last one, negative 3 times negative 2, 2 negatives make a positive, and 3 times 2 is 6, so plus 6. Middle 2 terms are going to combine, so negative 4x take away 9x is going to be negative 13x. Or if you prefer, you could do the same thing with the box method, and you should notice that all these terms are going to turn out to be the same, perhaps in a slightly different order. And once again, we could combine these 2 answers, negative 4x take away 9x, to once again also give us negative 13x plus 6. So a couple of different methods that you can choose if you want to multiply a couple of binomials together. We can either use FOIL or we can use the box method. Now, as an extension question, I threw this in right at the end of class. What is 2x minus 5 squared? Now, what a lot of people want to do is they just want to distribute the squared. They want to say it's 2x squared minus 25 or plus 25 if they realize that negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. And actually it's neither of those two things. So it comes back to the definition of what does squared mean. So squared means you multiply something by itself. So in this case, you're multiplying itself is 2x minus 5. So you do 2x minus 5 times 2x minus 5. I'm going to do FOIL because that's what I prefer. 2x times 2x, 4x squared. 2x times negative 5, negative 10x. Negative 5 times 2x, negative 10x. Negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. And then negative 10x take away 10x gives you negative 20x. Now I'm going to throw in one extra question as well. This is another special question that can be asked as well. So it's basically the same thing. The only difference is one of these is positive, one of these is negative. So if I was to do FOIL on this, x times x, x squared, x times negative 5, negative 5x, 5 times x, 5x, and 5 times negative 5 is negative 25. And the reason I chose this as my special question at the end, look what happens to the middle two terms when you combine them. Negative 5 plus 5, it actually cancels it out. So actually when you finished, you actually end up with 2 terms, whereas most of the questions you will do in class and for homework are going to have 3 answers. And that's a special result which we'll talk about in a different section.